There's so much flexibility in this career as a paramedic, and you're always learning so much. You never stop learning in this career, which is what I also really thrived on, is that there's new tools, there's new information, there's new products, there's new life-saving measures that we get to use that not any other kind of unique jobs like this get to use and do.
Welcome to the show, Carly Ring. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good ride. How are you doing?
I'm good. Do you mind giving a brief introduction of your amazing background?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Jacob and Ryan. I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Carly. I'm here in Ottawa. I'm originally from Toronto. I grew up there until I was about 15, where I moved out west. Spent some time out west in Calgary. Finished up my college there. My background is actually hospitality. I ended up going to work for the Fairmont Chateau Whistler for a year upon graduation, where I then did a year working for front office and moved over to Belgium, where I finished my degree in international management with a minor in French. And I have no idea how I did my French portion because I'm here in Ottawa and I don't use it. And then I moved back to Ontario to be closer to family and friends about 15 years ago. And now Ottawa's home, where I live with my husband and our 7-year-old daughter.
Incredible. And how did you transition to being a paramedic a whole lot?
To be honest, I follow my big brother's footsteps. So he's Ottawa police officer, and he started off as RCMP officer, and that was the route I was initially going, was policing. And it led to some opportunities for me actually becoming paramedic. And I said, you know what, I'm going to let him have his path. And my path was more so, I always grew up wanting to help people. If that being a snowboard instructor or lifeguard, camp counselor, that I grew up doing, teaching lessons and helping others in a different capacity. And for my role, I ended up wanting to just get into the paramedicine side of things. And I loved the hands-on tactics and having to use different kinds of skills and tools and having to use knowledge and just apply it out in the real world to help people, if it's through mental health or if it's through sickness, illness, injury. And that's been, the opportunity arose when I was about 25. And I started school here at a college where I ended up failing anatomy by 5% because I don't come from a background in science. And then I had to figure out if I wanted to pursue the program or not. After putting some thought into it, I took a different opportunity, a different program up north, where I was able to get it done within 9 months and did my preceptorship in Renfrew County. And I loved it there. And then I had an opportunity to be full-time here in Ottawa, and I took it, which was important for me because I got to work alongside my brother. And I thought that was a pivotal moment with my career, where I had him doing his path and myself doing my own path. And here we are. And that was just the transition. Something came to light and the opportunity came and I took it.
Can we linger on that point, working alongside your brother? Because that's a unique experience. I don't think many people can say they've shared the ability to do calls with one of their family members. What was that like?
It was interesting. I've seen him on a few calls. It's the assurance to know. And I have to say, I want to say how lucky I am and how grateful I am to have that experience. Like you're saying, not many people have that. And to know he'd have my back and I'd have his back no matter what. And I think that gave the assurance to know, almost like a protection, that you have that, if anything were to happen, he's there, and vice versa. So for me, it was a really, I don't know, profound moment. And I've seen him on a few offload delays when he'd bring me coffee or he'd check in on me at the hospital. And I don't know, it shined a lot of light into my privilege to be able to have that unique bond with my brother, being a first responder as well.
I'm sure that brought up a lot of proudness, just seeing your family member do that. And especially from like being a parent yourself, and imagine you have kids that grew up and they had that capability of doing that. I'd be like, that's a winning moment as a parent, thinking about that.
I love that. Yes, actually, thank you for saying that. Because my parents were really proud of the fact that I had so many struggles becoming a paramedic, like failing the program. I was the only female up in the program up north. I got assaulted when I was up there. Just a lot of challenges that I had endured becoming a paramedic. And the fact that out of 420 recruits, I was in the 12 to be hired with Ottawa. My parents were so incredibly proud. And knowing the struggles my brother went through with RCMP and becoming an Ottawa police officer, and we both ended up where we wanted to be, helping our own people. So I have to say, as my parents, they're extremely proud. And at my graduation, my brother was there. He was there to watch me get my badge. And that was a very, very proud moment for my whole family.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And that speaks volumes of your character. It's a transitioned to a new career where you had no experience of anatomy and you had a setback with it. And you went up north and experienced more hardships, but the end result was you had that ability to serve your community and work alongside your brother in some circumstances.
Yes.
So, so tell us about your PCP career. What did you learn? What did you love?
Oh gosh. Oh, I love that question. To be honest, people ask me that all the time, and I loved the hands-on. I loved, even though you're watched by the ministry and you're watched by the city, and like we have to be diligent, we have to be careful. There's massive liability in our career as paramedics. I loved every aspect of it. I loved being out with my partner and we're watching the sunrise and or having our coffee and we're just talking about life. And you have that moment, you have that flexibility to just go off and use the skills and tools and education, and you're able to apply that to daily interactions with people. And you never know what you're going to get. That's the best part of this job is you never know what you're going to get. Oh, and the scariest. So the best part is you never know what you're going to get. But on the other hand, that leads to you having to think outside the box, which is what I loved with that career. And you're always meeting new people. So for the first year that I was a rookie, I was pick of the day. So I didn't actually have a set partner. So I was always with a new partner. And some people don't like that. But for me, I took the opportunity to embrace it and learn the kind of paramedic I wanted to be and the paramedic I didn't want to be. So that was a really cool part of it. And I got to see different parts of the city that I thought I would never get to see and never get to explore. Different kinds of food too when you're out on a call and you didn't bring your lunch with you. Like, oh, I can just pull over and try this new chip truck, or can we quickly grab this bite of food as you're driving code 4 to the next call or whatever it happens to be. So I think there's so much flexibility in this career as a paramedic, and you're always learning so much. You never stop learning in this career, which is what I also really thrived on, is that there's new tools, there's new information, there's new products, there's new life-saving measures that we get to use that not any other kind of unique jobs like this get to use and do.
I think that's a core reflection of your values because there seems to be a pattern. And correct me if I'm wrong, all this, that hospitality is obviously serving and helping people, and being a paramedic, serving and helping people, and just being able to think on the spot and problem solve and do that in a very interactive and collaborative way with your partner or whomever's on scene. Why does that resonate with you?
And now that you're saying that, I'm reflecting on that. That is my new role. I get to still meet new people every day, and every day is a different day. I don't organize their agenda. I let free talk come through in our sessions. So for me, I think that resonates. I think you hit the nail on the head, Ryan, perfectly. I never thought of it that way, that if I'm taking on new kids teaching lifeguarding and swimming too. Sorry, teaching swimming, not lifeguarding, or new kids I'm teaching snowboarding too. I never had actual set structure. It was always a new day teaching. And same thing, hospitality at the Fairmont. There's always, or when I was in sales here in Ottawa at the hotel, there's always new people I was meeting and interactions I was having, which then ties into my paramedicine. I thrive well on also stressful environments. And that our job is highly, highly stressful, highly demanding. My role at sales and hospitality was demanding. My role at the Fairmont was demanding, having to appease making sure people were constantly looked after and having certain expectations to follow. So I think for me, it resonates with what I want to do with my entire life, that there's always room for change and opportunity, and take it if you can. Make something of it. And you only have one life to live. And if you're going to live it, you better be living it to the fullest.
Of course. And tell us what you're doing now then.
Exactly that. I never thought to be 38, sitting in my own office, having my own practice, and thinking that I was going to go back to school at, 3 years. So yeah, 35, and looking at my husband and be like, so I'm going to go back and do my master's. And he's like, what? Sure. Okay. When's this starting? What are we doing? And I still remember wanting to leave that. Like the very first month, I was like, I can't do this. I can't have a kid and a full-time job. And I can't do this. And he's like, so when are you going to do it? When's the right time for you to do it? And I reflected on that question because my mom went back to school when we were all under the age of 4 to get her degree. And she was my powerhouse. She was my everything I looked up to. And if she could do it, I'm going to do it. My dad went back to school. He did it when she was done. So if my parents could do it, knowing that I'm a twin and I have a brother that's 4 years older and they can all do it with us at home, I can't complain. I have one. So I made it happen. And for me, it allowed me to think, like, if they can do it, I can do anything, which then led me into my practice. All the hardships I had to go through to get here, the challenging courses, the online, because it's all online demanding program. I'd be driving, my partner would look at me, or driving to the next call, and I'm finishing up a report or a final. And she's like, how are you going from dealing with a VSA to now you have your laptop open and you're working on a final? Like, I want this so badly that it's not going to stop me. And there's pictures of me sitting on offload delay with my laptop open, working on reports and stuff. And I probably should have been studying protocols, but I wanted this. I really, really wanted this. And what came to light was if my daughter's watching me, she can know anything is possible for her. And that's all that I want. I want her to watch and to know like anything is not going to stop her from doing what she wants with her life. Even if she has to go back to school for the third time when she's 35, we will support that. And for me, it really came down to knowing what our community needed. As we briefly talked about at the beginning when I first met you guys, our community needs so much help and support. I know I'm only one person, but at the end of the day, if I could take my lived experience, if I could take my PTSD and my OSI and the depression and anxiety and the drinking after every shift and everything that we have to carry as first responders, and if I can apply that towards other people and help them without judgment and with creating a safe space, why would I not do that? Why would I not do that and give back to my community? And that's where I met my director, Dr. Mariana Byrne. So I'm also with another clinic, Ottawa Thrive Psychology and Wellness Center, and she took me on as an intern under practicum, and she let me soar. She let me fly with whatever I wanted to do. I bring like new ideas into it and new approaches, and she's like, yeah, let's do it, because she's so supportive of our line of work and our people, and she gets it. And that's where she's like, hey, Ring, I think you're ready to go start your own practice. I support it. What are we doing? So I'm at both. I have my own practice at CSR Psychotherapy, where I'm more like the proactive, the young recruits coming out, they need psychotherapy. They want to be proactive in their mental health. And then I'm with Dr. Mariana Byrne, where we do our WCB, VAC, and RCMP folks. So I have a well balance of both what I know, what I want for my future, and then how I can best to help them, support them in any way I can.
There's so many good pearls in there. And I'll start with, I don't know if you saw Jacob, I nodding, because Jacob just finished his master's and I'm finishing mine, and just balancing that around shift work. We can appreciate that you try to sneak in as much coursework as you can whenever you can. So good for you. And I love the pattern that you remember vividly your parents representing this example. This is what we can do. And you're doing the same to your daughter. And that has long lasting effects. And it just shows your values again. Like, I'm trying to be the best parent, set the best example. And just thinking about your career, how you wanted to do this, especially at that age, was there one event that led you to think, I maybe want to go down this route? Or was it like several little events that was like, okay, I want to go down this new journey because I think I can help more people?
For me, I never thought I'd become a psychotherapist. I always knew I wanted to be chief. I wanted to be on the TAC team, and I wanted to fly with this career of paramedicine. I love everything that paramedics stand by and that they do for our people. I 100% support them, and I wanted it so badly. But to answer your question, Ryan, when I look at it, and I think for me, it was accumulation of so much heaviness. It ended up being administrative betrayal. It ended up being the multiple calls. As you know, first responders, in our average year of work, we see over 1,000 traumatic calls in 1 year. 1 year. Average civilian sees 81 in their life. So how do we say, why are we not talking more about OSI, PTSD, PTSI, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, infidelity, if it's sex, money, betrayal, whatever it is? Why aren't we talking about it more openly with one another and accepting it? Why aren't we accepting the thought of suicide and ideations with that instead of just accepting mental health? Let's talk about it all. Let's get down and dirty and just discover and explore what we need for our people. And so I found I was in this, and I look back after the call that did it for me was the Westboro crash, January 2019. And I remember being like, like afterward, like I was on a call joking with officers. They're like, are we going to go grab beers after? Who thought this was going to happen today? And all of a sudden, at the end of it, you're looking around and you're like, that just happened. That just happened. My life had forever changed that day. But it wasn't just that day. It was accumulation of. It was after my mom passed away in an MPC motorcycle accident in British Columbia. It was after watching my brother, what he had to go through when he was hit in his cruiser with a bus. It just went through my colleagues disclosing to me, being like, man, this is really messed up. That they talking to me one-on-one in the rig after, being like, we have no support. Yes, we have peer support. We have EAP, but really, we don't have any support. What is out there helping us? And to me, it's like accumulation. All this happened. And it's like my therapist said to me at the time, you're in an instant pot ready to explode. Like, you're done. You're done. And I was like, well, what do I do with my time? She's like, we're going to pull you out. I'm like, what do you mean you pull me out? I've been working since I was 12. I'm used to working. This is what I do. She said, no, you're done. And between her and my psychologist, like, you're going to do yoga, you're going to work out. I'm like, what? That's what lazy people do. I work. I have to be at work. I can't be sitting at home. there's so much stigma around that. You're not allowed to not be well. You have to go be at work the next day at 6 a.m. ready for the next call. You have to be on your best. You have to be ready to perform. You can't be broken, because if you are, you're weak. And that's what did it for me, was realizing that I couldn't talk to my husband about it, even though his dad is former leads paramedic, leads Granville chief EMS. He grew up with that. His brother's a volunteer firefighter. My cousin's OPP. My uncle is police out in Edmonton, Montreal. I have family in military. I have brother in Ottawa police. So it's like, when does it end that we can't talk about things? But I couldn't. I couldn't talk about it with anyone. Couldn't even talk with my own family. They would tell me, go get an office job within the paramedic service. You'll be fine. I didn't want to be around brass. You just put me on the next call after next call after next call, and you'll be fine. So what did that lead up to was me just losing it. It was drinking after every shift. It was kicking our dying dog. It was yelling at my 1-year-old. It was thoughts of suicide. It was, what is normal? What's allowed? How do we process this? And finally, like, what can we do to be better? I had to work on myself, really work on myself, and take the time to figure out what I needed and how I can be the best version. And that finally led to the idea of this women's retreat I did for first responders. And someone approached me like, have you thought about being a therapist? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have time for that. I have a kid at home and who has 40 grand to go off and do a master's. Well, we made it work. And that's where it led me to the opportunity today, is that I just want to be a safe place for a voice to be heard.
I don't want to say it's like a death from 1,000 cuts, but it's almost like it's all individualized. You can have one big event that could lead to it, or you can have multiple small events or accumulation of big and small, and everyone's teapot is different. And it all depends on your previous experience, because Jacob and I were talking about this morning. How can you talk about this with family, especially if they're not medical? Like, you come home and you've had a busy day and maybe some high acuity calls, and you still got obligations to do for the family, and you don't feel like you can communicate that, or if you do, it's not fully comprehended. What's your recommendation, just from your professional experience now? How do you think we can?
I love this. Thank you. Thank you for bringing attention to that. We need to do that. So from both. So if I go to the paramedic side, I think one thing I didn't learn early on in my career is boundaries of what was safe to talk about with my family, including that being my dad or my mom, or at the time, or my brothers, my spouse, my husband now. So I think early on, if you're going to get into this line of work, have that open communication. You're going to get uncomfortable, but we want to get you comfortably uncomfortable to make those changes for your career, for longevity. Or we want you to have those conversations that are impactful and that are going to support you as the first responder and support your family, including your friends. Maybe you're out having beers and they want to ask you all about it and what's the worst call you've ever had. And you have to have that boundary to say, no, you know what, guys, I'm not here to talk about work. I really hope you respect that. I've had a really long day. I've had a long week and I just don't want to talk about it, because we all know what we see in our line of work. It's not the typical 9-to-5 job that we have where we're in an office and we're dealing with very critical things on this line of work. So I think setting boundaries would be my first recommendation. And a lot of people are, I don't want to set the boundary and I don't need to do it. No, I think you do, to protect yourself and protect your loved ones. What do they want to hear? Maybe they don't want to hear about what is the worst call that you've had that day. I know for my husband, he did not like hearing about my VSAs and my MVCs and my burnings that I had. He didn't like any of that. And when I would come home, I'd be all excited and hyped up to tell him. And he's like, okay, sure, I'll listen, but do I really want to? And that's what we had to learn early on. But I also want to say that it took time. It took him and I to go to therapy to explore what I was able to share with him. I couldn't even tell him I was off work at the time. I had so much shame around that. So it took us to go to therapy to figure out what we could talk about with one another. What was our safe place? What was there a threshold that we had in our relationship that I could share or not share with him, and vice versa? And so if, as a therapist, I'm going to circle back to that and say, I think having that safe place, having that outlet where you can share things, but your families that may not understand it, help educate them. Help educate them. There's so many new programs that are coming out there for our first responder families and military and PSV families, that there's so many new programs coming out with formal education, psychoeducation, bringing them into sessions with you, inviting them, being like, hey, I have something I want to share with you. Can you come to a session with me? It's not about you, it's about me. But I want to invite you and share that with you. And giving them the safe place to be heard as well, to then allow them to understand your role and what's to expect with that.
That's such a valid point. And literally, I just spoke about this yesterday with a paramedic, how they have a spouse that's not medical and they want to come home and maybe release some of their calls they've done. And their spouse is like, I'm pre-syncopal, like I'm nauseated from what you're telling me. I don't want to talk about this anymore. And you can see it's this contrast between two worlds where one person doesn't want to hear, but one person does want to vent about it. And maybe they don't have anyone else to talk to. So I'm glad there are resources out there. And I love that you said the boundaries, because everyone needs boundaries. But I would like you to come sit in and like listen to me talk about this and maybe a different avenue.
Hmm. Hmm. I think you hit the nail on the head, Ryan, when you said that we don't have the safe place to talk about. So what can that look like? I think that's really important to both sides to be heard, the spouse and like not even just the spouse. What about the siblings, right? What are we educating them on? What happens if we have a family member who's going through PTSD or recovery or addictions? How do we help educate them without making them feel like they can't be a child, but allowing them to be heard, allowing them to understand the process of what mommy and daddy are going through so they can recognize it, not be in charge of it, not to have responsibility of it, but to be able to recognize it and to know mommy and daddy aren't okay. And that's why we go and we see our therapist, or mommy's having to go away on a program for a week because I want to be the best version of myself. I don't want to be angry anymore. And explaining that to them, and then including loved ones or older children in the process. Well, anyone over 18. So like I work with only adults, 18 and older. And if I could bring in the siblings and help educate them with what their parents are going through, why would I not do that? It's a win-win for the whole family and for the whole system if we can do it together.
I couldn't agree more. And that's definitely a gap that you're solving with this beautiful way to do it. And we're actually discussing this too in the car, that even if you don't feel like you're having a psychological response to maybe like a very high acuity call, you're still having a physiological response to it that may linger. Because some people are like, oh, that call didn't affect me like psychologically. But I remember having a very busy set of shifts and going home and still hearing the tones when I was off. I'm like, no, that's not good, because I did so many acute patients. So you can have a prolonged physiological response to high acuity demands of calls, but you may not feel like psychologically, I feel fine, seemingly. But does that make it harder to recognize PTSD, or harder to recognize like maybe some compassion fatigue or just anxiety or just fatigue in general? Like, because that is unique. We maybe don't have the ability to say my physiological response is this, even though I'm not feeling psychologically fatigued at this time.
Hmm. Great question. And as I reflect on that, I think, when's the last time you had downtime to process that call, Ryan? When's the time you actually sat back and like, I just went to a house that was on fire and it killed 3 people and I couldn't revive them. Not to be triggering or activating of anything, but really, truly, if we're going to talk about this and open that wound, when's the last time I look at some of my clients like, sorry, you did what over the weekend? Boom, boom, call after call after call. They haven't had time to process and deregulate. So they don't know how to emotionally regulate. They don't know what's acceptable. Depression, it's to decompress. Depress, you're depressed. You're decompressing every thought in your head. So you're becoming depressed because you're not able to actually experience what it's meant to be like: angry, sad, joy, happy, tearful. You just delivered that beautiful baby boy on scene. That's an amazing experience. Have some joy and happy. No, you're going next to the next code 4. You haven't had time to regulate. So until we have had time to take a step back in our line of work and say, oh my gosh, we just had a really joyful, happy call. Everyone survived. Everyone's great. Everyone's safe. Baby's healthy, whatever the circumstances are. Maybe you're helping the elderly back to bed and you just did a nice thing for them. They feel safe with you. And it's just that small call, but then you're on to the next hot call. And what does that look like? You haven't eaten. You haven't talked to your loved ones. You haven't gone to the bathroom. You haven't had a chance to be human. We are not made in this line of work to be human. We are made to respond to the ministry. You're time stamped. We're activated. You have to be out in that rig within 2 minutes once that call comes through. What does that look like? Have you eaten? Have you talked to loved ones? Have you had a chance to just debrief with your partner of what you've experienced from 5 to 5 shift or overnights? So my point is to that, I think it's a hard thing to go from physically experiencing, the increased heart rate, you got the heat in the head, you have the red tunnel vision, you're driving 140 and a 60 to get to the child VSA, whatever the circumstances is, you haven't had time to feel human. And what does that look like for us? When's the last time you felt that way? We don't want the old version of you. We want to know currently, how do you feel? What does that look like to you to unpack that call? Because you've been holding on to it for the last 20 years, but it's still living with you because you're drinking every day now. You haven't been allowed to feel. In this line of work, you're only wearing one hat, and that's the role as a paramedic or police officer, fire, military, CVSA, whatever it is, corrections officer, nurse, doctor. You don't get to be Ryan, the dad, the entrepreneur, whatever it is. You have to be ready to be engaged and fully to respond at any minute. That's why I don't think we can underline if I have it or not. I think it just comes out naturally with time. And unfortunately, psychological wound. Once you open that, it's there.
When a colleague's kind of like steadily reaching out, maybe just they don't seem like they're taking it seriously, but obviously that call did affect them. Like, what would be the best way that we can like build that connection?
I love that. I think this line of work, it was me, like as a therapist or as like just a one-on-one.
I think just as a colleague on the road, right? Like we have a couple maybe hours on offload delay or some time at the station, and someone telling you a story, and it's like, oh, that's really serious.
I think just allowing the safe place, but it's so hard in our line of work because we don't trust our own. And that's a challenging thing, right? Where there's so much, you want the brotherhood and the sisterhood, but unfortunately, anyone I've talked to, they don't have that. They don't have that connection piece where they feel safe talking to their own about what they've experienced. Why? Because they're perceived weak, or they're perceived as, oh, you don't need to show emotion. Like you don't need to be attached to that call. Like if you get attached, the more you get attached, the more that you're going to have negative effects, which is going to lead to PTSD and it's going to affect your job. So if we break that stigma and we have the acceptance of what you just shared, Jacob, well, hey, like funny situation, I was just in this really hot call and oh, everyone's okay. But you're recognizing that like, oh, geez, maybe it's not actually a good situation that you've been in. How can we talk about it? Welcome it. Hey, I hear that might be funny to you, but you know what? I am actually a little concerned, and maybe have that transparency and saying, you know what, you say that it's okay, but are you okay? Is there something you want to talk about? Because you brought it up to me and I'm a safe place and just welcoming it. And I think the more that we do welcome it, the more people are going to have that. They're going to ease off instead of pushing against. They're going to say, okay, oh, Jacob is a good guy. I can talk to him. I do feel safe with him. I can share things with him. You're not going out and you're not the one to gossip and you're not the one to throw them under the bus. You're not the one to lead a negative experience. You're welcoming of that. And I think if we do more of that, it can lead to more openness amongst our own peers and building that connection that we desperately need in our community.
I always try to think about it like this, that analgesia and pain. We know someone's pain's subjective, but yet we know the vast majority of healthcare providers put a subjective feeling back onto them saying, that's not 10 out of 10 pain. I know what is. But that's the same with PTSD or like triggering calls. It's because maybe I've heard this from anecdotes that smells bothered people and it brought back memories that were personal to them. Hearing like IV pump alarms, that triggered them because that was something personal in their lives. And even though that may not resonate with you, it resonates with them. So we have to think it's like their subjective experience is based on their past experience. They're different from mine. So everyone has a different threshold, what may or may not trigger them. So I think that's such a good question, to just be that person and recognize that anyone could be triggered by anything. It doesn't have to be the most significant, gory call. It could just be sounds, smells, and everything. And I've been battling this my whole career thinking about, do you think we do a good job at teaching people to regulate? Because if you look at a system, it's just like nowhere was I taught to learn how to regulate besides looking on my own. And it's a skill.
Yes, I fully agree. And that when I was circling back, thinking of my time as a paramedic student, we had maybe one course, and it was psychology, and it was, okay, here's a video or here's a photo, but they don't bring in the smells, the taste, the hearing, the experiences, what you see, what you're feeling. Is it a snowy day in MVC and snow is a trigger for you? I don't know what it could be for anyone. So I think I love that question. We need to be, and that's something I'm actually looking at in my next chapter, is how to educate more students coming in, more rookies coming into this line of work. Because I feel that there's not enough exposure, real exposure. We have the preceptors and the students coming together and they're doing their best as that they can, being preceptors and teaching them, but are they equipped? Are they equipped to then tell the student, okay, this is what you're allowed to be or not to feel? How do we help them regulate those emotions as preceptors? And how do we do it as superintendents or commanders with our own staff? But as we go into it, I think it needs to start from the very top and work its way down. It needs to start with our management checking in with one another and helping regulate themselves, checking in with ourselves, checking in with our staff, start all the way from the top and work the way down. Once we get that going and once we have more exposure to one another and openness and teaching how to regulate our emotions, instead of saying you have to be one way. No, you can be many ways in this career. You just make sure you have support. The attachment will follow, but what all comes with is the acceptance of, okay, so I had that VSA for the child. Yes, I'm a mom and I felt for that other mom and it was horrific and I was crying absolutely afterwards. I'm allowed to cry. I'm allowed to be human because that was an awful call. But at the end of the day, if I'm being told to suppress that's what's going to hold me in for my career. That's going to break longevity in my career, suppressing.
It's so funny you say that, because do you think patients and their families would appreciate if they saw us show some emotion instead of just a flat, like, here's your death notification, monotone, you can just see they're disengaged, versus somebody that's actually emotionally invested and you can see how empathetic they are towards what the family's experiencing?
100%. 100%. I love that, Ryan. I love that because it comes to, death notifications I've done. My very first one is to my brother with my mom. And that was that was the worst day of my life. But moving forward with other death notifications I've done in my career, because of that lived experience I've had, that allowed me to be empathetic with that patient, that allowed me to be human. And people don't like that. I'm going to get called out for this in this conversation because you can't show emotions. You can't show this, not in our line of work is what I keep being told. But however, once you start showing that, you show empathy, you show I am real and I show I'm human, so many more patients are like, oh, wow, you do understand. I can feel safe with you. I can open up with you in the back of the rig for a domestic assault that I just experienced. It hasn't just been a one time, it's been a lifetime. Or you show that empathy, you show the flexibility and understanding, compassion towards those people. Yes, it can get exhausting. It can, and I hear that and I respect that. But it also goes hand in hand with why we're doing the work. We don't want to lose yourself. We don't want to lose yourself in this line of work. We're more than identity. We're more than a badge. We're more than a uniform. And I think if we start showing who we are as humans, that will lead to longevity in this career. But what needs to happen, what needs to start happening for us to help make sure that we don't lose ourselves with showing too much emotion, that we need to start being engaged with more mindfulness, more activities, more self-care to stop leading to burnout, compassion, fatigue. Get into therapy, go hit in the gym, go running, engage with your family, engage with social connections. But it's hard when we're trying to balance the role of shift work, nighttime. It sucks. It sucks doing night shifts. It sucks having to work Christmases and holidays and birthdays and events and not being around family and missing those opportunities. But find other meaningful ways to connect with others to ensure you don't lose yourself to this role. Because if you do, you're gone. There's no coming back from it.
It can suck that I'm missing my family on an important day I want to be with them, but I still want to serve patients. How do we prevent people from going down the compassion fatigue routes? Because you mentioned a lot, like exercise. How important is exercise for prevention of mental health disorders and just treating them?
I'm sure like you and I connected on a social media platform. I'm sure you've seen my fitness journey with running and getting engaged and seeing what I'm trying to do. For me, if I didn't learn about fitness earlier on in my career, I personally feel I would not have been on a road to recovery with PTSD. Because for me, being engaged at the gym every day gave me purpose. Making sure I had to challenge myself gave me purpose. I'm running the next half marathon, getting to the next kilometer, making sure I stuck to my routine. Routine is big for us. Anyone who's going through OSI, PTSD, or PTSI, depression, anxiety, they have to have a routine. It gives them connection. It gives them purpose, which is what they need in their recovery. So movement also gets you out of your four walls. Your four walls, I know people that sit in their houses all day and they won't leave and they won't engage with others. Well, the minute we get you outside, what does that feel like for you to be out there? I don't need you at a full packed gym. I don't want you there because you're going to be too anxious, and I know that. So how do we get you outside? How do we get you sitting on your front doorstep and taking the next steps to go for a walk around the block or go for a run with a loved one? What does that look like? Okay, exposure therapy. So I think movement is key into recovery of any mental illness. If it's yoga, if it's walking, golfing, snowboarding, boxing, whatever it is. And anything with dexterity also helps with recovery of PTSD, both sides of the brain. It gets it back, it gets it active, it gets it going, it gets it retriggered is what you need in a positive direction. Instead of us using it to have to do our multitasking job or going code forward, we got sirens, we got radios, we got our partner in the back we're trying to be mindful of, we got IVs and drugs and everything trying to do. So I think dexterity helps with recovery and managing both sides of the brain that we need to keep recovering in.
This channel and its content are created independently and not affiliated with or endorsed by any employer, agency, or organization. The information provided is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Viewers must follow their local paramedic guidelines, clinical standards, and applicable laws when providing patient care. Always practice within your scope of practice and seek direction from authorized medical oversight when required.